It was during the winter holidays, right after finals. Most of my friends had gone back to their hometowns, but I decided to stay in Pine Hill, the little college town I'd grown to love. I figured I'd pick up a part-time job to make a little extra cash before the spring semester. After about a week of checking listings and hearing nothing back, I finally got a call from this old diner on the edge of town. It was called May's Grill, a kind of rundown, greasy spoon place that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the early 80s. The owner was this kind older lady named Doris, and after a quick trial shift, probably helped by the fact I had some waiting experience, she hired me on the spot. The job was simple enough, but the place had an odd vibe. The lights buzzed overhead like they were tired of working, and every now and then, this weird, almost metallic smell would drift through the air, like old blood in grease. Honestly, it wasn't the kind of place I'd normally work at. But money's money, and I kept reminding myself this was just temporary, just until college started up again. It was around 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was out front, wiping down the cutlery, waiting for the last table to leave. 4 guys sat in the back booth. They looked rough, like they'd just stepped out of a truck stop at 3 a.m. clothes torn, faces weathered. The kind of guys you instinctively avoid eye contact with. About 30 minutes passed before they finally got up. One of them lumbered over to the register. I smiled as I rang them up. "That'll be $42.50, I said. He pulled a wad of crumpled bills from his coat pocket, grinning like a kid with a secret. I knew that grin. I'd seen it before. And sure enough, here came the sleazy line. "You doing anything later tonight, sweetheart?" he asked, leaning closer across the counter. I kept it polite. "Thanks. Have a good night," I replied, my voice firm and distant. He laughed under his breath and mumbled something I couldn't make out as he walked out the door. I waited until they were out of sight, then quickly cleared the table, cleaned up, and changed out of my uniform. The last kitchen guy waved goodbye as I stepped out into the cold night air. My apartment wasn't far, maybe 10 minutes on foot, so I always walked to save gas. That night was quiet. The sky was clear, and the streetlights cast long, flickering shadows across the sidewalks. I had only walked about 5 minutes when I heard a sharp whistle behind me. I froze. Across the street, standing under a flickering street lamp, was the same guy from the diner. His grin was wider now, and he was motioning for me to come over with one hand. My feet felt glued to the sidewalk for a split second before adrenaline took over. I turned and started walking fast. My boots thudded against the pavement. I could hear his steps quickening behind me. My heart was pounding. I turned a corner and broke into a sprint, my breath fogging up in the cold night air. I could hear his footsteps, closer, heavier. And then, a hand yanked me back by the shoulder. He was right there. His face twisted, red with fury. The friendly mask he wore earlier had vanished. He brought a finger to his lips. "Don't scream," he hissed. "I'll cut you." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. But then, something inside me snapped. Rage. Fear. Survival. I don't know what it was, but I lashed out. I grabbed his face and dug my nails into his eyes with every ounce of strength I had. He let out a guttural scream, clutching his face. I didn't wait. I bolted. I ran until I saw the familiar porch light of my apartment complex. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, until I finally got the door open. Once inside, I slammed it shut and collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. My roommates came running down the stairs. They wrapped me in a blanket and sat me on the couch while I told them everything. They were horrified. But more than anything, they were relieved I made it back. The next morning, I called May's Grill and quit. Doris was sweet about it. She even said she understood. It was a shame, really. She'd been kind. The job wasn't terrible. But I just couldn't go back. Not after that night. Not knowing he might still be out there. College has started up again, and I'm getting back into a routine. I'm trying to put it behind me, but some nights, I still see his face. still feel that hand on my shoulder. And sometimes, I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't fought back? I was 19 and barely getting by, so I picked up a second job at a roadside diner in a small Pennsylvania town called Maple Hollow. The place had that classic American feel: red vinyl booths, humming neon signs, and a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. We closed at 3 a.m. on weeknights, but on Fridays and Saturdays, it stayed open 24 hours. Weekends were wild. Groups of drunk college kids would stumble in after the bars closed, laughing too loud, craving pancakes. But weeknights were different. The late-night customers were mostly truckers, hospital workers, or factory folks coming off the graveyard shift. I picked up 2 overnight shifts a week. Any more than that, and I probably would have passed out from exhaustion. Past 10 p.m. on weeknights, I was the only server left. It was usually slow, sometimes even peaceful. But one night, around 1 a.m., a heavy-set man came in by himself. There was only one other customer at the counter, half asleep over a plate of eggs. I greeted the man and led him to a booth near the window. He gave me a wide smile right away and started talking in that weirdly flirtatious way that always feels off. His name was Trevor, and he looked like he hadn't seen a gym or a barber in years. Unfortunately, being a waitress meant smiling through the discomfort if you wanted decent tips. He ordered a burger and a chocolate milkshake. Basic stuff. I walked away and sat by the register, half scrolling through my phone and half watching the clock. He kept staring at me. Like, full-on eye contact every time I looked up. Eventually, he called me over by name. "Hey, Ellie," he said with a wink, "can I get the check?" I gave him the bill and walked away, relieved he was finally leaving. But when I went to clear the table, I found a $5 tip and his phone number scribbled on the receipt, next to a drawn winking face. Gross. I crumpled it up and tossed it. I figured that would be the last I'd see of Trevor. But of course, it wasn't. A few nights later, he came back. Again, it was late, maybe 1:30 a.m., and again, the place was practically empty. He grinned as I greeted him. "How's my favorite waitress doing tonight?" he said, like we were old friends. I had only served him once. Still, I smiled, showed him to a booth, and played along, hoping maybe he'd leave a better tip this time. Bad move. My polite small talk made him think I was interested. He started telling me about his boat and how I should join him sometime. Curious, I asked what kind of boat it was. He pulled out a picture of this tiny, beat-up fishing boat barely big enough for 2 people. I forced a smile and said something like, "Cool, my dad has a boat too." Looking back, I should have said boyfriend, but I didn't want to lose the tip. He asked for my number again. I told him company policy didn't allow us to give numbers to customers. He seemed to accept that. But when he left, I found his number again on the bill. This time, he wrote, "I bet you were just shy last time. Don't be shy again. Text me, it'll be our little secret winking face dot." And once again, just $5. The guy was a low-grade creep with even lower tipping skills. Then came the third visit. It was close to 2 a.m., and once again, he showed up right when the diner was quiet. Almost like he was watching the parking lot, waiting for my shift to slow down. This time, when I greeted him, he didn't smile. "You didn't call," he said, serious now. I gave him my best customer service face and said, "I'm really flattered, but I can't text customers. I could get fired." He stared for a moment, then just turned and walked out. Relief washed over me. Maybe that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, while I was working my other job at the grocery store, I got a text from Mindy, one of the other night shift waitresses. "Do you know a bald guy? Bit overweight? Kinda intense," she asked. My heart sank. "Yeah, why?" "He was asking for your full name last night." I freaked. "Did you give it to him?" "Yeah." "Sorry." He said he wanted to leave a compliment for the best waitress he's ever had. I was furious. That evening, I got a text. Unknown number. "Hey, it's Trevor, your favorite customer, smirking face. I know you said you can't give out your number, so I got it myself. Now you didn't break any rules, grinning face with smiling eyes. I blocked the number immediately. I tried to shake it off. But later that week, when I got off work, I found an envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Inside were photographs. Pictures of me, taken from the parking lot through the windows of the diner. At first, it was just me wiping tables or walking to the back. But the further I flipped through, the more disturbing they got. Shots of me outside my apartment. Me walking to my car. Me unlocking my front door. And the last one, a grainy photo taken at night, from outside my living room window. That was it. I drove straight to the Maple Hollow Police Department and handed the photos over. Along with the text messages, they agreed there was enough to file a report. That night, I stayed at my parents' house. The next morning, a detective called Trevor. They told him if he contacted me again, he'd be facing harassment charges. No warning next time. Just cuffs. I quit the diner job that same day. My lease was up in a few weeks anyway, so I found a new apartment across town, one with secure entry and a camera facing the lot. That was the last I ever saw or heard of Trevor. He was the first, and I hope the last real stalker I ever had. But sometimes, when I park my car at night, I still glance around just to be sure. And I always lock the door twice. It was Halloween weekend. It was falling on a Saturday this year. My mom always takes decorations and giving out candy very seriously. It's almost like she has to compete with the neighbors to have the most sought-after house to trick-or-treat at. We live on a corner in a regular suburban neighborhood, so when we're decorating, we also decorate the side yard of the house too. Since Halloween was a Saturday this year, kids started trick-or-treating earlier in the day. However, it was a cloudy, cold day, and there was a chance of rain in the forecast. My mom apparently couldn't understand that this may have been a factor as to why there weren't many trick-or-treaters out. Instead, after a few trick-or-treaters seemingly skipped our house, she assumed it was because there weren't enough decorations out to attract the trick-or-treaters. She told me to go get whatever containers were left in the attic containing decorations. I insisted this wasn't necessary, but she insisted otherwise and forced me to, so I went up to the attic, which is directly above my bedroom. The attic door is in the hallway upstairs. I pulled down the door and climbed up the ladder. We had the holiday containers sorted a specific way, so I went over to where the Halloween containers were. There were only a couple still left up there. I opened one to see what was inside, and said good enough. I started dragging the container out towards the attic door, then I carefully slid the container down the ladder. As I was about to climb down out of the attic, I thought I heard something on the opposite side of the attic, like a piece of wood cracking under the weight or pressure of something. I looked over to the wall of containers in the far corner. It's an attic, though. The sound of wood snapping or cracking really wasn't that weird. I climbed down out of the attic and brought the decorations downstairs. From there, my mom and I put out some more decorations in the front yard. It was really windy and felt like rain at any second. There really weren't many trick-or-treaters at all. My mom was disappointed because she goes all out with the candy, too. She's always been one of those people who makes a bunch of homemade goodie bags with a bunch of different candies inside. I could see how upset she was that she wasn't going to give most of them away at this rate. The day progressed, and I was in my room playing video games on my laptop, while my mom was downstairs in the living room and kitchen handing out candies to the few trick-or-treaters that would come. And then, it started to rain, and that pretty much put a damper on the rest of the day, trick-or-treaters-wise. I was gaming in my room when I heard a crack from above my room, in the attic. Again, not really abnormal, but I made a mental note that that was the second time I heard something from up there. The rest of the day was rainy, and that night it turned into a thunderstorm, perfect for Halloween night. I used to be a big gamer in my teens, and so instead of going out with friends on a Saturday night, I would often just stay in playing video games, unfortunately. This night was no exception to that. I stayed up really late into the night, past my parents'. It was still raining outside. Then, I heard something above me again. This time, it sounded like footsteps. I was wondering if my mom was in the attic putting stuff away, but it was late at night. I sat and listened for a while. The sound stopped. I paused my game and went out into the hallway after a couple minutes, and I saw the attic door was open. I now heard noises from downstairs, in the kitchen. I heard the sound of things being moved around in the fridge. My heart was racing now. I tiptoed down the hall to my parents' room and quietly opened the door, and I saw both my parents fast asleep in bed. I felt my stomach twist, and I felt sick. I quietly closed the door and went up to my dad to shake him awake. He woke up easily, and I whispered to him, "There's someone in the house." He immediately sat up and said, "What?" I said, "There's someone in the kitchen right now in the fridge. I think they're hiding in the attic." My dad is not a large or confrontational man. He keeps a police baton under his bed in the case of an emergency, but I don't think he ever thought he'd have to actually use it. My dad told me to stay quiet. He went to go look out into the hall quietly. When he came back inside, he whispered that he saw someone down the hall, climbing into the attic. He shut the bedroom door, and he locked it, and then called 911. By now, my mom was awake too, but we all stayed as quiet as possible and didn't freak out. It was now a waiting game until the police showed up. My dad went downstairs to open the front door. The attic door was now shut. The police had to go inside, and they found some homeless-looking man hiding in the corner behind that wall of containers. The sounds I was hearing were, in fact, from a person the whole time. The man, while seeming dirty and kind of scary-looking, apparently was very straightforward and honest. Then he simply walked in when he saw the front door was open the day before, and he had no place to sleep. He brought one of our blankets up there, and there was a jar of peanut butter up there too that he was eating. The whole thing is still very disturbing, and I wonder how things would have played out if I or my father confronted the man instead of the police. My parents didn't press any charges. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. It was during the winter holidays, right after finals. Most of my friends had gone back to their hometowns, but I decided to stay in Pine Hill, the little college town I'd grown to love. I figured I'd pick up a part-time job to make a little extra cash before the spring semester. After about a week of checking listings and hearing nothing back, I finally got a call from this old diner on the edge of town. It was called May's Grill, a kind of rundown, greasy spoon place that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the early 80s. The owner was this kind older lady named Doris, and after a quick trial shift, probably helped by the fact I had some waiting experience, she hired me on the spot. The job was simple enough, but the place had an odd vibe. The lights buzzed overhead like they were tired of working, and every now and then, this weird, almost metallic smell would drift through the air, like old blood in grease. Honestly, it wasn't the kind of place I'd normally work at. But money's money, and I kept reminding myself this was just temporary, just until college started up again. It was around 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was out front, wiping down the cutlery, waiting for the last table to leave. 4 guys sat in the back booth. They looked rough, like they'd just stepped out of a truck stop at 3 a.m. clothes torn, faces weathered. The kind of guys you instinctively avoid eye contact with. About 30 minutes passed before they finally got up. One of them lumbered over to the register. I smiled as I rang them up. "That'll be $42.50, I said. He pulled a wad of crumpled bills from his coat pocket, grinning like a kid with a secret. I knew that grin. I'd seen it before. And sure enough, here came the sleazy line. "You doing anything later tonight, sweetheart?" he asked, leaning closer across the counter. I kept it polite. "Thanks. Have a good night," I replied, my voice firm and distant. He laughed under his breath and mumbled something I couldn't make out as he walked out the door. I waited until they were out of sight, then quickly cleared the table, cleaned up, and changed out of my uniform. The last kitchen guy waved goodbye as I stepped out into the cold night air. My apartment wasn't far, maybe 10 minutes on foot, so I always walked to save gas. That night was quiet. The sky was clear, and the streetlights cast long, flickering shadows across the sidewalks. I had only walked about 5 minutes when I heard a sharp whistle behind me, I froze. Across the street, standing under a flickering street lamp, was the same guy from the diner. His grin was wider now, and he was motioning for me to come over with one hand. My feet felt glued to the sidewalk for a split second before adrenaline took over. I turned and started walking fast. My boots thudded against the pavement. I could hear his steps quickening behind me. My heart was pounding. I turned a corner and broke into a sprint, my breath fogging up in the cold night air. I could hear his footsteps, closer, heavier. And then, a hand yanked me back by the shoulder. He was right there. His face twisted, red with fury. The friendly mask he wore earlier had vanished. He brought a finger to his lips. "Don't scream," he hissed. "I'll cut you." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. But then, something inside me snapped. Rage. Fear. Survival. I don't know what it was, but I lashed out. I grabbed his face and dug my nails into his eyes with every ounce of strength I had. He let out a guttural scream, clutching his face. I didn't wait. I bolted. I ran until I saw the familiar porch light of my apartment complex. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, until I finally got the door open. Once inside, I slammed it shut and collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. My roommates came running down the stairs. They wrapped me in a blanket and sat me on the couch while I told them everything. They were horrified. But more than anything, they were relieved I made it back. The next morning, I called May's Grill and quit. Doris was sweet about it. She even said she understood. It was a shame, really. She'd been kind. The job wasn't terrible. But I just couldn't go back. Not after that night. Not knowing he might still be out there. College has started up again, and I'm getting back into a routine. I'm trying to put it behind me, but some nights, I still see his face. Still feel that hand on my shoulder. And sometimes, I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't fought back? This happened way back in 2005. I was 18. I was living in Uvalde, Texas, a very low-income neighborhood, the kind you'll find sprawled out all over the place in rural Texas when you're not right outside of a city. The closest city to me was San Antonio. I was going to some local community college, because that's all my parents could afford for me. One of my best friends from high school, Andrew, moved to San Antonio to go to San Antonio College. He was living in some small apartment a little outside of the city with a roommate. His girlfriend would also often stay with him. Since the city's only really an hour and a half away, I would visit him all the time. He invited me this one weekend to come crash for the night, so I took my trusty old 1995 Toyota pickup truck. Nah, just kidding, the thing was a piece of crap. The gas gauge didn't even work on it. I'd have to always just keep track of when the last time I filled the tank up was, then reset the trip mileage. I took Route 90, which was a straight shot from Uvalde to San Antonio. I was on the road at like 3 p.m. on a Friday, and there was no traffic at all. I got to Andrew at a reasonable time. His girlfriend wouldn't be getting there until tomorrow, so tonight we were going to go out. We stopped at a liquor store, and we drank in his apartment for a while with his roommate. Then the three of us went to this dive bar that would kind of look the other way with fake IDs. That was basically our night. We got back to their apartment around 2 a.m. after getting food. I slept on the couch. The next day would have almost been the same thing, but Andrew and his girlfriend were having issues all day, and as the two of them got drunker as the night progressed, she started yelling at him in front of me, and it got really awkward and uncomfortable. I didn't really have much to drink that day because I was already iffy about staying the night with her there. I eventually decided I would just head back home. I said goodbye to everyone and started my journey home. It was very late at night. I want to guess midnight, maybe a little earlier. Route 90 was deserted at this time, so I would fly for my pickup standards, but suddenly the engine started sputtering. I felt my heart completely drop, so I realized I forgot to fill up the tank. I slowed down, but it was too late. The engine cut. I pulled to the side of the road and tried starting it a few times, but it did no good. I took out my cell phone, which was equally as shitty as my truck, and I tried to get a signal. No shot. I couldn't even call for help. I had to just put my hazards on and hope a good Samaritan would pass. You wouldn't believe how long I sat on the side of the road before seeing headlights. I waved my arms as the car approached, but it zoomed past me, ignoring me. This happened again after another 10 minutes or so. I was starting to feel hopeless, like maybe I should just sleep in my car and wait till sunrise to get help. So that's what I was going to do. I got inside my car, took the key out of the ignition to cut the battery, and just angled my seat back to go to sleep. I would hear the occasional car zooming past like once every 10 minutes, but it didn't feel worth waving people down in the dark. It seemed sketchy for myself and to the people in the cars, but when I was starting to actually drift away to sleep, a car door closing from behind me woke me up. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a car pulled up behind me with its headlights off. I turned around now to get a better look. There was some big pickup truck, but I couldn't see anyone inside of it, nor did I see anyone outside of it. Maybe someone pulled over to help. I got out of the car and said excuse me to no response. I walked closer to the truck just to confirm no one was inside. Then I walked back to my car. This was weird. I looked towards the trees on the side of the road. Maybe someone was pissing in the woods. I went back inside of my car and locked the door. This was just too weird. Suddenly there was a tap at my window. I jumped. I looked to see a man looking down at me into the car, smiling. I didn't do anything yet. He said, "Hey buddy, need a hand?" I lowered the window a crack and said, "Hey, I ran out of gas." The man said, "That's quite the predicament. Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." When he said this, I thought he meant help him with a gas jug to fill up my tank or something honestly, and so I stepped out of the truck and shut the door, expecting him to lead me to his truck. But he stood there, looked down at me because he was much taller, still smiling, and said, "I need you to empty your pockets please." It took me a second to process what he meant. I was literally a broke college student driving a piece of shit pickup truck. I wasn't about to get robbed of the only cash I had in my phone. I ran for it in the direction of the trees. I'm small but fast. I turned around and saw he was chasing after me. Once I made it into the trees, I zigzagged all over the place until I seemed to lose him. Then I crouched behind a big tree to catch my breath. When I heard him approaching closer, I quieted my breath. I heard him say out loud, "I'll kill you, you piece of shit." I don't know if he was just saying it out loud out of anger or if he wanted me to hear it, but I was too scared to move. Even after I heard his footsteps move away, I didn't move. In fact, I stayed in this position the rest of the night, eventually laying behind this big tree, up until dawn. I went back over to the highway to my truck, and the truck behind me was gone, but my truck's doors were both open. I found that my glove box had been gone through and completely emptied of anything somewhat valuable. My flannel hoodie was also taken, which had something in the pocket I'm sure. I finally managed to wave down a good Samaritan, and he gave me a ride to the closest gas station. I bought a fuel can, filled it with gas, and the man brought me back to my car, where I filled my tank just enough to drive the truck to a gas station to fill up completely. Then I went straight home. When I was 18, I threw a house party at my parents' house for Halloween. It was closed invite, meaning I told people not to bring strangers. That was a rule my parents gave me. They were not at the house that weekend, which was why I was able to throw the party, with another rule being the place needed to be even cleaner than it was before the party. I invited around 50 people, and probably around 40 ended up showing up. The party started around 6. It was starting to get dark out. It would be partially in the backyard and partially the first floor. My parents left me money for refreshments like sodas and food to leave in the kitchen for people to take. I told my parents it would be a non-alcoholic party, but I think they knew that was a load of shit. My friend who's a few years older than me brought his DJ equipment to DJ, and the party was in full swing by dark. Everyone seemed to listen and not bring strangers, because I recognized everyone. Just about everyone came up to me and greeted me after entering. I didn't drink too much because it was my party and I wanted to be somewhat responsible, but everyone else was getting drunker the later the night went. Eventually one of my friends came out of the house after getting food, and he asked who that guy in the skeleton bodysuit inside the house was. I didn't recall seeing anyone in a bodysuit costume, so I went inside the house, where there were a few people hanging out in the kitchen. I asked if they saw someone wearing a skeleton bodysuit, and someone told me yeah, it seemed like he was snooping around the house. I grew concerned when I heard this, and I asked if anyone invited him or knew who it was. No one inside knew him. I looked around the house and then found him. He was walking down the stairs. I asked who are you, and he said Mike, I was using the bathroom upstairs. It was a really deep voice, he sounded older. His frame was also a bit larger, not like muscular, just a stockier looking build. I asked who invited you, and he said Tom. I didn't know a single Tom, so I asked who's Tom. Then I just asked him if he could take his mask off. He didn't listen or even respond. He just walked past me towards the front door, then he left. I ran upstairs to check if any of the rooms had been gone through, and if anything had been stolen. All the doors upstairs except for the bathroom door were closed, and after a quick look, it seemed nothing was stolen. So I went to lock the front door, and then I told a bunch of my friends about how weird that just was. I went outside to ask a few friends if they knew who invited the skeleton guy, and not a single person knew who it was. Eventually, I gave it a rest. The party was winding down around midnight. Most people were starting to leave. A few close friends stayed behind a little later to help clean up. After all was said and done, it was a successful party. When everyone was gone, I started getting ready for bed. One of my friends, Vinny, stayed over on the couch downstairs. After brushing my teeth and changing into pajamas, I decided to go hang out with Vinny in the living room for a while. We had some drinks and just watched funny YouTube videos on TV. My little sister, who was 14, was asleep by now. She didn't hang outside with the party because she was too young. We were being quiet so as not to wake her, but when Vinny and I both heard noises from upstairs, it seemed that we woke her up. I was expecting the sounds, which sounded like footsteps, to move to the bathroom or something. I got a little confused when I never heard my sister's door open. I decided to go upstairs just to check on her. I knocked on her door and she didn't answer. I opened it a crack and saw that she was sleeping. So what were those sounds I was hearing then? I went to my parents' room and realized the door wasn't clicked shut. I was able to just push it open without twisting the doorknob, which was odd because I made sure their door was closed before the party. I looked inside the room without turning on the lights. Then as I backed out of the room, I looked through the crack of the door and on the other side, I saw that guy in the skeleton bodysuit. I made no mistake, I knew what I was looking at. I'm impressed with myself for not running or screaming. I pretended I didn't see him and pulled the door closed. Then I went downstairs and told Vinny that the guy from before is in the house. I had him call 911 and tell them that there's an intruder in the house, while I tiptoed back upstairs to my sister's room, went inside and shook her to wake her up. I explained to her what was going on and made sure she would be quiet while following me downstairs. She did a good job not freaking out either. When we were downstairs, we met Vinny in the kitchen by the back door where we went outside to the backyard. Then we cut through the side to the front and went to our neighbor's house, ringing the bell at least 3 times. Our neighbor let us wait with him for the police, but at some point before the police got there, that guy escaped through our parents' bedroom window. I know because the window was now open. Their closet door was also open where my dad keeps his safe. It's as if it were someone who knew about the safe being there that tried breaking into it or just taking the whole safe out from the floor. It was obvious how the man broke in. He simply just walked into the party again. It could have been any number of people though. We never found out who it was, but it was someone who knew I was having a party, someone older, and someone who knew about my parents' safe. My sister ended up telling our parents about it, and obviously that was the last party I was ever allowed to throw at their house. This happened in 2016 when I was 15. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Marissa was 23 years old when she matched with who she thought was a 25-year-old guy from town named Luke. The two were chatting on Tinder and seemingly hitting it off, so they exchanged numbers. After texting for a while, talking about music and sports, the chat shifted to a more sexual tone. Marissa was on Tinder looking for casual sex. When this topic came up, Luke said he was looking for the same thing. After chatting for a while longer, Luke suggested Marissa come by to his house since he has the place to himself. Interestingly, Luke didn't give an address until after he asked Marissa what area she's from, and when she did, he gave an address that was conveniently close to her, walking distance as a matter of fact. Before agreeing to come over to Luke's house though, she requested they have a phone call first. The two had a phone call, and Luke sounded like a normal young guy. They joked around on the phone for a bit until Marissa was comfortable enough to agree to go over. Deciding to go early just to pass the house and scope it out first, Marissa walked about 10 minutes through the neighborhood until she got to the block. It was late at night, so a lot of houses had their lights off, and there were no cars out on the road. Marissa passed the house and noticed 2 cars in the driveway and a car parked in front. All the lights were out. It didn't look like a house with just a guy alone. This was already a red flag, so she went back down the block and texted him, "I'm almost there." He replied, "Oh, you're early. Almost ready. Walk slow." Marissa was getting bad vibes, so she started slowly inching back in the direction of her house at a pace that allowed her to stall a bit longer for a reply from Luke confirming that she was okay to come in. But suddenly Marissa heard a car approaching the intersection down the block behind her. She turned to see a white van with no headlights on, turning onto the street. Marissa ran to hide behind the side of a house, and she watched as the van parked on the side of the road. The van just sat there. Nobody got out. It was parked a few houses away from the given address. Then Marissa got a text from Luke saying, "Okay, I'm ready. Let me know when you're on my block. I'll come out." Marissa turned and started running down the block. Inconspicuously though, making sure to stay close to the houses she passed and not on the sidewalk or close to the street. She ran most of the way home and blocked the number, also reporting the Tinder profile. Just to be on the safe side, Marissa and her mother went to the address the Luke person gave, and the woman who opened the door denied even having any sons. Marissa and her mother went to a police station to report this incident, just so that the authorities could be aware of it and link any future reports to it as well. By the sound of it, due to Marissa's cautiousness, she narrowly avoided being abducted by the driver of that van. I live in Burke County, North Carolina, in Morganton. I'm used to the quiet lifestyle that comes with living in a rural place. You get some weird characters here and there, but it's usually nothing too bad. I own a nice plot of land with my husband. My work schedule fluctuates. Sometimes I work days, sometimes I work nights. This happened on a night that I was on my way home after a night shift, so it had to be like 3 a.m. My phone was almost dead, I was hungry, I was tired, and I just wanted to get some food and head home. I stopped at a gas station to get $10 worth of gas and also a packaged sandwich, which I proceeded to eat inside the gas station cafe. Some sketchy guy was eyeing me for a little until he left the building without buying anything. After eating, I went outside to fill up the gas and then got back in the car. The smell of gasoline was extra pungent for some reason. These roads are very dark and twisty at night, so I was driving slow, especially since I was tired after a long day of work. Then something unexpected happened. The needle on the gas gauge suddenly dropped to E, and the low gas light came on and beeped. I had no idea what was going on. I'm not a car person and I'd never run out of gas before this. Plus the needle just suddenly dropped. I thought at first that the computer was glitching, so I pulled over and restarted the car, but the needle was still on E. I tried to continue driving, but the engine died. I started having a panic attack. I called my husband first thing, and thank God he picked up. I asked him how did my car run out of gas after I just filled up, and as I got out of the car I smelled gasoline. I told him this, and he said it sounds like I have a leak. He told me he'd head right over, and he'd call our roadside assistance company, but then I heard a car coming with no headlights, and suddenly it stopped not far behind my car. I suddenly thought to bring up that sketchy guy who was watching me at the gas station, and asked my husband if there was a chance he did something to my car. My husband's tone suddenly changed to sounding more concerned and worried. He said yes, there's a chance that he may have cut my fuel line. I didn't know what that meant, all I knew was I needed to run. I took my keys out of the ignition and shut the door and locked it so that the headlights would turn off. My phone was on like 2%, so I told him to text me when he's close. I ran off the road and towards the first house I could find. I ran down the long driveway and up the property to the front door. All the lights in the house were off. I still rang the bell multiple times anyway. Eventually a light turned on, and then the door opened. A man in his 60s opened the door. He looked like he was just woken up. I asked him to let me in to hide and charge my phone. After a bit of explaining, he opened the door fully and let me in. I asked him for an iPhone charger, and he said he'd go look for one, then asked me to take a seat in the living room. I sat down, still in my nurse scrubs, feeling a mix of emotions. The man called out from the kitchen asking me if I wanted some water. I said yes please. Little did he know, I saw his reflection in a mirror in the living room that gave visibility into the kitchen. I saw him fill a cup with water, then I know for a fact I saw him drop something into the water. He walked out of the mirror, but the faucet was still running. It ran for a solid 30 more seconds before he turned it off. He came back into the living room with a glass of water and handed it to me. I thanked him, and he sat down and just looked at me, then asked me to explain the situation again. I replied to him I just really needed a charger so that I could contact my husband. He said "Oh right," and went upstairs. I checked my phone, and it was on 1%. I used that remaining battery to send my current location to my husband just in case. I then smelled the glass of water, and although it didn't smell like anything, I knew he put something in it. Now I had to make the decision of whether I should leave or not. On one hand, I needed to charge my phone badly. On the other, I was 99% sure he did something to this water. I heard him walking back down the stairs, and he said he doesn't have any iPhone chargers since he has an Android. After he said this, I got up and walked straight for the door. I'm not an idiot. Once outside, I ran back down the driveway to the road. I felt like throwing up. I couldn't believe two separate potential incidents from two different men happened in one night. I crept along the side of the road behind the trees. I took out my phone and sent my updated location, and right around now was when my battery died. I waited for until I saw familiar headlights of my husband's truck. I went out waving my arms, and thank God it was him. I got inside the truck and let all my emotions out, crying to him about what I just went through. He brought us to my car, and there was no longer a car behind mine. My back window was shattered though, and it appeared someone had gotten into the back seat, but nothing of high value was left in my car to steal anyway. My car battery was also now dead. When I told my husband about the man who tried to potentially roofie me, he was so furious he wanted to go break down his door, but I told him no, let's just wait for the tow truck to come. We waited quite a while before it came, and my car was towed to my dealership, where they would take the car in the next day. My husband was right, my car was vandalized and the fuel line was cut completely. Thank God I was off the next few days, because I needed some time to mentally recover from this night. The idea that twice in one night I was almost a victim of some sketchy men, I just couldn't get over. This was the Tinder match between a guy named Chaz and who he thought were two girls around his age. This is how the conversation went. My friend, and I think you're really cute. I hope your friend is also a girl, lol. She is silly. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Where are you ladies from? Then they share their locations, which aren't far. The other profile asks, are you busy tonight? Yes, I am. I'll be hanging with you too. Yes, want to come around 10? Yeah, where do you live? Wait, actually our parents are both home. Want to meet at the park? We can find a place to hang there. I guess we can do that. My parents are home too. Damn. What time should we meet there? 10? Yes. Okay, what are your numbers? Let's just message on here until we meet. Damn, I see how it is. Gotta earn your trust. Yes, we're heading over now, okay? Okay, Sam. I'll probably be there like 10 to 10. Okay, perfect. Where exactly in the parks do you want to meet? You can meet by the statue on the dirt path. It's like a dog walking path. No one will be there this late. Then we could find a better spot from there together. Okay, I looked it up. I think I know how to get there. I'll message you when I'm there, okay? Okay. Chaz then arrives to the destination in the park, and he sends a message saying he's here. He follows it up with, "This is kind of creepy. Are you guys here?" This was the last message he sent the profile before it unmatched him, and then he was left alone in the woods in the park on a dirt path completely void of any people. Chaz knew at this point that he had been tricked, but he didn't know just yet if he was just pranked or if he had walked into a trap. Then he started to hear noises in the woods, like the snapping of twigs and leaves on the ground indicating he was being watched. He already had his phone out using it as a flashlight to navigate his way to the agreed meetup point. So at this point he decided to start recording for his own protection. This was the footage he captured. In this footage, you can easily see that as he pointed his light into the woods where he heard another sound, it revealed someone in the woods who then started to run out from the trees and chase after Chaz. While running, Chaz stopped recording to turn off the flashlight, then ran into the trees to hide. He started recording again when he thought he had lost the person chasing him. He kept recording the rest of his way out of the park and back to his car to have video evidence of anything in case of a worst-case scenario. Luckily Chaz made it back to his car and home in one piece. He tried reporting the profile to Tinder just based off the screenshots he took, but Tinder got back to him saying they're unable to find any profiles that matched the description or pictures. Chaz was obviously not wise to enter a suspicious situation like this. The other profiles' refusal to give their number as well as meeting anyone for the first time in a park by the woods at night where nobody else would be around are two major red flags that this was some kind of trap. He was lucky to have gotten away. Based off the girl's recounting of this event, it's safe to assume that the man in the picture wasn't the same guy that they met in the shed, and that this Chelsea person didn't exist. Maddie and her friend were smart to go into the situation together, as there's always more safety in numbers. This last one is another example of why you can never be too careful with online dating. This was submitted by Jeremy, and this was his Tinder match. He matched with a girl named Mia, who was in the same high school class as him. Their conversation went as follows: "Hey, long time no see." "I know, hey. How have you been?" "Not bad, and you?" "I've been good, just working a crap ton." "You still talking to anyone from high school?" "No, not really. I was happy for high school to be over." "Same. It's funny. We only ever really spoke a few times in school." "Yeah, I know. Maybe we should make up for lost time." "Maybe we should. Do you have a Snap?" From here, Jeremy gives Mia his Snap, and they continue their conversation there. Jeremy didn't take any screenshots from the Snap conversation, but basically from there, they continued to talk about life after high school. Then they escalated to talking about linking up somewhere and chatting in person. They agreed to meet in a nearby parking lot behind a strip mall where nobody goes at night. Jeremy was ready to go basically right away, not needing much time to get ready. Mia, on the other hand, said she wouldn't be able to get there for another hour and a half at least. She claimed she was with friends and couldn't just ditch them, so they set up a meetup time for 12 behind the strip mall. It took Jeremy only 5 minutes to get there, as the lot is in the same town that the two live. He sat there in his car waiting for her for about 20 minutes, receiving apologies for being late every few minutes on Snapchat. Eventually, headlights appeared from around the corner and approached slowly, then stopped not too far from Jeremy's car. Mia snapped him a picture of his car saying, "I think I see you," so Jeremy stepped out from his car. He then realized the car looked to be a small Honda or Hyundai, when in reality the car that was posted all over Mia's Instagram was a Jeep Cherokee. Immediately, Jeremy went back into his car and went to DM Mia on Instagram. Meanwhile, the car outside was honking at Jeremy. He opened Snap and messaged her, "Hey, step out from your car and let me see you for a second." They opened it, took half a minute to reply, then said, "I don't want to, it's so cold out, what's wrong?" At this point, Jeremy knew something was off, so he got in his car and started driving home, but the car was following him, honking the horn. Jeremy decided to get on the highway, at which point the car behind him tailed off and disappeared. Jeremy pulled to the side of the road to block the Snapchat account, but they had already beaten him to it. He went home, and by then he had gotten a DM back from the actual Mia. This is how their conversation went. Jeremy opened with this, "Hey, this may sound really weird, but did I match you on Tinder?" She says, "Hi, no, why?" Jesus, long story. "I matched someone catfishing as you, and we talked for a while about high school. I really thought it was you. I met up with the person running the account in a parking lot, but it was some random car, not your Jeep, so I drove away." Then he sent screenshots of the conversation. On August 7, 2014, Warina Wright and Gable Toast matched on Tinder. Gable wasn't her usual type, looking like a man who spends way too much time on his appearance, but he reminded her of Sam Winchester, a character in Supernatural, one of her favorite TV shows. Gable opened with a raunchy and aggressively forward message, saying, "You look delicious, I want to do dirty things to you," to which Warina responds, "Does that usually work?" Gable then sends, "Can you be a freak in the sheets?" to which she says, "Probably not, depends." Gable says, "What does it depend on?" And Warina responds, "What I've had to drink, lol. Gable keeps the conversation sexual by replying, "Let's get drunk together, I'm a porn star after a few drinks." Warina gives Gable her number after the two exchange a few more messages, and a week later, they meet for the first time in the Cabell Mall. They spent the night together heavily drinking, and CCTV footage from multiple establishments showed them meeting, walking into a nearby beer garden, then purchasing a six-pack of beer at a nearby bottle shop. And after their night out together, they ended up returning to the Avalon Apartments, where Gable lived alone on the 14th floor. 6 images taken by Gable that night show the couple apparently laughing and smiling in the apartment and on the balcony from which Warina would plunge to her death only hours later. For whatever reason, Gable recorded the audio of his entire night with Warina, which included the entire confrontation the two would have towards the end of the night, which was later played during Gable's trial. It was later found out that Gable had a weird habit of recording his entire dates with multiple women. At some point after the two had sex, Warina can be heard becoming increasingly erratic and aggressive towards him. However, as the night progresses, Gable can be heard in the recording refusing to let her leave, and Warina's terrified screams to let her go home are silenced when he locks her outside on the balcony. During this recording, Gable can allegedly be heard choking out Warina before locking her outside. "I should have never given you so much to drink. I thought we were gonna have fun. Where's my shit? Where's your phone? What's your phone number? Go 100 fucking psycho bitch. I don't deserve this shit. All right. I'm a nice fucking guy. Yeah, it must be on the balcony. I have shit loads of money in my eyes. My fucking money. Stop. Just calm down, please." "I'm not calming down. You've had too much to drink." "All right. I'm not calming down because I've had so much to drink and I have shit loads of money in New Zealand. It's not funny. Shit. Just calm down, please." "Do you know?" "How?" "Yeah, because no one else has money." "Do you even remember what you were doing to me like half an hour ago? It was freaking me out. You beat me up for no reason." "Exactly. Why?" "Because you said you had shit. You thought I was funny or something." "It's not." "No, I told you." In the audio, he can be heard saying to Warina that she was lucky he didn't throw her off the balcony, along with numerous other threats. "It's not about how you need. It's not about how." "Yeah, it is. You're fucking insane. It's not about how you need. It's about how you do this shit now. See, I thought you were kidding and I've taken enough. This is fucking bullshit. You're lucky I haven't chucked you off my fucking balcony, you goddamn psycho little bitch. Who the fuck do you think I am? Yeah, do your Muay Thai now. What? What? Is there something to say? Say it. Yeah. He'll be able to apply for parole on March 30th, 2046 when he's 74 years old. On the morning of October 26, 2018, 21-year-old Grace Mullane drove from her Essex County home to Heathrow Airport in London, where she boarded her flight to Peru. She spent the next 10 days traveling from island to island before heading on her way to Auckland, New Zealand, where she would arrive on November 30th, 2 days before her 22nd birthday. Grace was staying at a hostel where she made friends with some of the other tourists and backpackers. Grace was known for being an outgoing social butterfly. She spent the rest of the night on the 30th taking it relatively easy, and decided to start swiping on Tinder looking to meet someone, maybe make some local friends while she visited. She swiped until she connected with somebody named Jesse, and the two began to chat. Grace and Jesse made plans to go on a date the following day, and so on December 1st, 2018, Grace's bunkmates watched as Grace got ready and left the hostel to head to her date with Jesse. A few hours went by, and at some point in the evening, Grace sent a message to a friend back home stating that the date was going really well and she felt a connection with Jesse. However, it wasn't long after this message that Grace's phone and social media activity went silent. The next day was her birthday, and many of Grace's family and friends went on to send Grace happy birthday wishes, but she never replied to any of them. And as the days went on, everybody became increasingly concerned, and so on December 5, 2018, Grace's family reported her missing to Auckland law enforcement. They clarified their concern by pointing out that Grace was actually carrying 2 cell phones while she traveled just in case there was ever an issue with one of them, so that way she would still be able to stay in touch. Both of Grace's cell phones had been going directly to voicemail as of December 2nd. Grace's father traveled to New Zealand to do some searching of his own. CCTV footage caught Grace leaving her hostel at exactly 5:37 p.m. She then walked to a bar and casino known as Sky City, which was fairly close to her hostel, and she waited there for a few moments, until she seen meeting up with and hugging Jesse. The two of them then went into Sky City for approximately 90 minutes while they had some drinks together, and things appeared to be going really well and the two appeared to be hitting it off. They continued their date onto the next bar, known as Mexican Cafe. They had a few more drinks at the Mexican Cafe, and then they continued on again to another bar known as the Blue Stone Room. While at the Blue Stone Room, things appeared to become more intimate between the two. They can be seen kissing multiple times, before Jesse made a quick trip to the bathroom. This is the exact moment that Grace messaged her friend back home that she was having a really good time with her date. Jesse then returned, and the two eventually left the bar at 9:40 p.m. The two are seen holding hands and walking towards a building known as the City Life Hotel where Jesse rented an apartment. The two can be seen entering the elevator of the building and exiting on the floor of Jesse's apartment. This is the last moment that Grace was seen alive. The next morning on December 2nd, Jesse is then seen entering the elevator alone and exiting his apartment building. He's then seen purchasing a handful of cleaning supplies as well as a new large suitcase. He places the new purchases inside his apartment, and then he leaves the apartment again. He then jumps in a taxi and gets a ride to a local car rental facility where he rents a vehicle and heads to another bar in the area to meet up with a second Tinder date the day after murdering his previous Tinder date. This date became uncomfortable very quickly, and she decided to end things because she found him really creepy after he had been talking about the best places to hide a dead body. When the date was over, Jesse stopped by the front desk of his apartment building and asked if he could borrow a Rug Dr. carpet steam cleaning machine. There was this seasonal haunted house attraction that popped up just outside of Silver Springs for 2 years straight. It wasn't officially licensed or anything, just a bunch of trailers and plywood walls thrown together in a clearing behind an old feed store. They called it Devil's Hollow, according to a crooked cardboard sign stuck in the grass by what passed as a parking lot. The sign looked like something bought at a dollar store after Halloween was already over. The parking lot itself was nothing but damp grass, uneven and barely lit. It was the second year, and also the last, when my friends and I finally decided to check it out. I was with Ryan, Josh, and Eric, college buddies. We were all off on Fridays, so we figured a Thursday night would be perfect. Fewer crowds. Less waiting. Turned out we were right. We pulled up around 9 p.m. and there was no line at the ticket booth, just a teenage girl in a skeleton hoodie scrolling on her phone. We paid $30 each, and she pointed down a dirt path marked by flickering lanterns. Only 4 people were ahead of us. What we didn't realize at first was they were letting people go in one at a time. Not groups. Just one person at a time. That wasn't in the ad. Honestly, that made it creepier and kinda exciting. So naturally, we pushed Josh to go first. I ended up second to last. Eric was behind me. Every few minutes, a ghoul in a bloodstained apron would open the door and let the next person in. When Ryan was called up ahead of me, that's when my nerves kicked in. I hadn't done a haunted house since I was 12, back when my dad still took us trick-or-treating. Then it was my turn. A woman with wild hair and a red-smeared face beckoned me through the entrance, then slammed the door shut behind me. Inside, it was pitch black, save for occasional strobe flashes. My eyes struggled to adjust. The path twisted through claustrophobic halls made of plywood, covered in plastic limbs and fake blood. Props of shredded mannequins hung from meat hooks. Loud bangs came from hidden speakers. And just when I let my guard down, actors would leap from behind curtains or through trapdoors in the wall. Each scare landed. I jumped every time. At one point, I entered a narrow hallway that connected 2 scenes. It was darker than the rest, no lights, no sound. Then I felt something graze my back. I yelped and spun around. A tall figure stood in the shadows behind me. I let out a nervous laugh, assuming it was another actor. But before I could move, the figure began pushing me firmly down the hallway. I played along at first, thinking it was part of the act. But it didn't feel like acting. There was no jump scare. No scream. Just this quiet, relentless push deeper into the dark. After a minute or so, the pushing stopped. I heard a door creak shut behind me, and suddenly the silence was heavy. No music. No screams from other guests. Just me in the dark. Then came the hands. They weren't theatrical or playful. They grabbed me firmly, inappropriately. It was immediate and wrong. I shoved whoever it was off me and shouted, "Get the hell off me, dude!" I stood there breathing hard, heart pounding. "That's too far," I said. "You're not supposed to touch people like that." No answer. I waited, expecting them to laugh it off or lead me to the next part of the attraction. But nothing happened. Just silence. Way too much of it. I finally broke the rules and pulled out my phone, flipping on the flashlight. What I saw made my stomach twist. I was in some kind of supply room. Props were stacked in the corners, fake heads, buckets of fake blood. Mop buckets, trash bags, and old paint cans were piled up too. But that wasn't the first thing I saw. The first thing I noticed was the man standing about 4 feet in front of me. He wasn't in costume. He wore all black, hoodie, jeans, gloves, and a black cloth mask that covered the lower half of his face. His eyes didn't blink. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't respond. Just started waving his arms in this awkward, jerky way like he was pretending to be one of the haunted house actors. That's when I stopped playing along. I backed away, found the door, and bolted. Using my phone's flashlight, I retraced my steps down the narrow hall. A few turns later, I ran into another actor, a teenager in clown makeup, who barked at me to turn off my light. I was grabbed by someone. "I don't think they work here," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to get out." He broke character instantly. Just go that way. You're almost to the exit." "Where's your manager?" I asked. He looked overwhelmed. "He's up front, I think." "Ticket booth. There's a trailer office right next to it." I didn't wait. I speed-walked the rest of the maze, ignoring every scare and prop until I burst out the exit. My friends were all waiting, confused. "What took you so long?" Ryan asked. "We thought you went in before Eric." I told them everything, and we all marched back to the ticket booth. The girl who sold us the tickets looked caught off guard. I asked for the manager. She said he wasn't there that night but would be back the next evening. I explained what happened. Her face went pale. "I'll let the team know," she said. She handed me back my $30 without protest. The next day, a girl from our college posted on Facebook. She'd gone through Devil's Hollow the same night. She'd been sexually assaulted by someone hiding inside the attraction. She wasn't vague about it either, described the same kind of grab, the same dark hallway, the same storage room. Her experience was worse. She pressed charges for negligence. Turns out the guy who attacked us didn't even work there. At least, that's what the staff claimed. And maybe it's true. But then who was he? And how did he get inside with no one noticing? How does a place like that not have security, or even a decent headcount of who's supposed to be working each night? They shut the place down a few days later. Devil's Hollow never opened again. But sometimes, especially around Halloween, I still think about that man in the dark. What if I hadn't fought back? What if I hadn't brought my phone? And how many others never said a word? I grew up in a little town called Pine Hollow, tucked between miles of cornfields and overgrown backroads in rural Indiana. It wasn't anything glamorous, just old barns, fading churches, and houses that had seen better decades. Most folks were scraping by, doing what they could. Property taxes barely existed, and with that came some interesting neighbors. Ours, for example, was harmless but odd. He used to collect mannequin heads and dress them up for Halloween, and I'm not even kidding. We didn't have much ourselves. But things got a little better once my siblings and I were old enough to chip in with part-time jobs. I worked at the gas station after school. That's when I met this girl named Kelly, back when hot or not was still a thing. We matched in late summer and started hanging out pretty regularly by the time fall rolled in. It was early October, leaves were turning, air crisp in the mornings, perfect hoodie weather. Kelly and I were always looking for cheap ways to spend time together. We'd already done the usual walks by the lake, drive-through runs, the occasional hike. That day, we decided to try something new and took a random backroad, just seeing where it would lead. After maybe 30 minutes of driving, we spotted this odd little diner in a cracked parking lot with some outdoor seating. It wasn't on Google Maps or anything. Just there. So we stopped. It was warm for October, with heavy clouds and still air. We ate lunch on the patio, and by the time we got back in the car, the weather had shifted. A dense, rolling fog had started moving in. We kept driving, now on a long, empty road flanked by farmland in small wooded areas. That's when we noticed a hand-painted wooden sign that said, "Pumpkin Patch, this way," with an arrow pointing off a dirt path. Behind it, through the fog, was a weathered farmhouse. Kelly and I exchanged a look. "Why not?" she said. So I turned off the road and followed the dirt driveway past the house. Behind it was a wide clearing with tall trees wrapping around the back and left side, and in the middle, a large pumpkin patch. Easily over 100 pumpkins, maybe more. The fog made it hard to tell. There was only one truck parked nearby, an old, rust-red Ford that looked like it hadn't moved in years. We noticed an elderly couple sitting on the back porch of the house. The woman wore a floral apron and waved as we got out. The man just stared, kind of smiling, though something about it felt off. His smile was wide and toothless, almost cartoonish. "Here for pumpkins?" the woman called out. "Yeah," I said. "How much are they?" She smiled wider. "Oh, no charge. Take what you like." We were both surprised. "Thanks," we said, and walked into the patch. Most of the pumpkins were small, squishy, or oddly shaped. The fog made everything damp, and I could feel the mud sucking at my boots. But after a few minutes, I spotted a solid, round one, bright orange, smooth skin, no rot. Heavy too. I hoisted it up and carried it back to the porch, but the couple was gone. No sign of them. Not on the porch. Not in the yard. Should we just leave? Kelly asked. I guess? They said it was free. We walked back to the car, loaded the pumpkin in the back seat, and I started making a three-point turn on the driveway. That's when we heard someone yelling. A man, middle-aged, wiry, wearing a ball cap, was storming out from the side of the house. "Hey! Hey! Stop right there!" I rolled down the window, startled. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted, leaning into the car window. "You think you can just steal from my property?" "I'm calling the cops." "What?" "No, wait," I stammered. "There was an older couple on the porch. They said we could take a pumpkin." He blinked. "What older couple?" "Sir, we just spoke to them. Your parents, maybe?" "I don't have any parents," he snapped. "Ain't no one else living here but me." I looked at Kelly. Her face was pale. "We swear," she said. "They said it was okay." The man didn't respond. "Where's the pumpkin?" he barked. "In the back seat," I muttered. He reached in, grabbed it, and slammed the door shut. "If I ever see either of you here again, I'll shoot. Got it?" Then he spit in the dirt and turned back toward the house. I didn't wait. We got out of there fast. Neither of us spoke for a few minutes. The car was dead silent except for the low hum of the engine and the tires crunching over gravel. I tried to lighten the mood. What if they were ghosts? Kelly shot me a look. "Don't." But even I felt a chill at my own words. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. Weeks later, my younger brother and sister decided to check it out for themselves. They went to that same patch, same driveway, same beat-up truck, same foggy air. They met the man, bought a pumpkin, and asked if he lived there with anyone else. He told them he lived alone. That really messed with me. If he was telling the truth, who were the people we saw? And if he was lying, why? What did he gain from scaring us like that? I still don't know what happened. But I've never been back. And I don't think I ever will. Maybe they were spirits, tied to that land. Or maybe we just stumbled into something we weren't meant to see. Either way, I still think about that smile. What do you think happened out there? Would you have picked a pumpkin too, if it was free? It was mid-October. The trees were glowing gold and burnt orange, and the air had that crisp scent of fallen leaves. My wife, Emily, and I, just two women in our early 30s, had been married for 2 years. Hiking had always been our shared therapy. Nature helped us breathe again after stressful months at work and in life. This time, we booked a weekend getaway in a quiet corner of Oregon, right outside a place called Pine Hollow. We found a cozy Airbnb nestled near the base of Blackwood Trail, one of those hidden gem hiking spots mostly known to locals. This was our third time in Oregon, and it always felt like coming home until it didn't. The cabin's host, a sweet, silver-haired woman named Karen, seemed genuinely kind. Very grandmotherly. She'd left the key in a lockbox by the front porch and messaged us the code ahead of time. The place had a warm, rustic charm, wood-paneled walls, mismatched rugs, and a little clubhouse out back with a pool table and dartboard. It felt safe. Private. Like the world couldn't reach us there. Surrounded by woods on every side, it was the kind of place you'd dream about if you wanted to unplug. No neighbors. No noise. The next morning, we drove out to the trailhead. It was quiet, with only a few other hikers passing us by. We made it halfway up the ridge and sat on a wide boulder that overlooked the forest below, just taking it all in. The silence was comforting. Then came the sound of crunching leaves. We turned to see a woman leaning against a tree. She looked to be in her mid-50s, bundled in a faded green parka, just watching us. When we caught her eye, she glanced away a little too fast, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. We didn't say anything at first. She made it weird. But then she called out, "Hi." Her voice was soft, friendly enough. We returned the greeting, and she asked where we were from. Emily mentioned we were from Bend, just a few hours away. The woman said her name was Meredith and that she was a local. She offered a few hiking recommendations and nearby spots to grab food. It seemed like small-town friendliness at first. But something about her made us uneasy. Maybe it was the way she kept glancing past us, like she was checking for someone else. When the conversation faded, we said our goodbyes and started heading back down the trail. That's when we noticed she was behind us. Not close enough to talk to, but always there. Matching our pace. Every time we paused, she paused. Every time we looked back, she smiled and said nothing. It didn't feel like a coincidence. We finally stopped and sat on a bench near a fork in the trail to wait her out. Eventually, she passed us and muttered something like "okay then," with a half-smile. We didn't respond. We waited until she was completely out of sight before finishing the hike and driving back to the cabin. Exhausted, we napped for an hour, then headed out for dinner at a place called Sage and Thyme Cafe in town. Great vegan menu, dim lights, soft music, everything we needed after that strange encounter. By the time we got back to the cabin, the sky had turned ink black. No streetlights. Just the glow from our porch light and the sound of the wind moving through the trees. We changed into pajamas, curled up under a blanket, and found something light to watch on Netflix, some goofy rom-com. Halfway through the movie, Emily was already dozing off, and I was barely keeping my eyes open. Then came the knock. It was soft, but sharp enough to jolt me fully awake. We were in the middle of nowhere. Nobody should be here. I muted the TV and sat frozen for a second. No peephole. All the blinds were shut tight. I whispered Emily's name and shook her shoulder. Someone's at the door. We stared at the door in silence, waiting. Another knock came, this one louder. No way we were opening that door. It was only 9:15 p.m., so I grabbed my phone and texted Karen, "Hey, is that you at the door?" That's when a knock came at the side window. And then, a voice. A woman's voice. Is someone in there? Emily and I jumped. Our hearts were racing. No one normal does that, goes from the door to the window like that. Then the sound of someone trying to lift the window. Thankfully, it was locked. My phone buzzed. Karen was calling. I picked up, whispering, "Are you here?" She sounded groggy. "No, I'm home." "Why? What's going on?" I told her someone was at the cabin, knocking, trying the windows. She went quiet for a second and then said, "That's not right. Nobody should be there. None of my friends even know you're staying. Don't open the door." I nodded even though she couldn't see me and hung up. Then we heard it again. More knocks on another window this time. Then a different voice. A man. "We need help. Please let us in." We looked at each other. Panic in our eyes. But we weren't stupid. We'd watched enough horror documentaries to know better. I crept to the back bedroom, lifted the blind just a crack, and that's when I saw him. A man. Walking past the window. Hoodie. Beard. Hands in his pockets. Looking around like he was scoping the place out. He didn't see me. I tiptoed back to Emily and whispered, "There's more than one person out there." This wasn't random. This was a setup. We called 911 and gave them the address. The dispatcher stayed on the line while we crouched in the corner of the living room, clutching each other. The knocking eventually stopped. They gave up. For now. When the police finally arrived, we practically collapsed into their arms. 2 officers checked the area with flashlights, asked us a few questions, and waited while we packed up our things. Karen was shocked when we told her and apologized over and over. She offered us a refund, but we said it was fine. We just didn't want to be there another second. The officers followed us to a motel near the main road and waited until we got into the room. We drove home the next morning. It didn't feel like a coincidence. Meredith, the woman on the trail, had probably been part of something bigger. A group. A trap. Looking back, I think they thought we were easy targets. 2 women, alone, secluded. We weren't. But we were lucky. Now, we never go hiking without pepper spray and a backup phone battery. And we always tell someone exactly where we're going.
because you never know who's really out there in the woods. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.
This happened in late October,
and by then he had gotten a DM back from the actual
weekend
Mia.
that makes small towns like Willow
This is
Creek
how their
feel extra
conversation
alive.
went.
I was a
Jeremy
senior in high
opened
school
with
then,
this, "Hey,
and one of
this
my
may
closest
sound
friends,
really
Michael,
weird,
shot me
but
a
did I
text
match you
early
on
Saturday
Tinder?"
afternoon asking if I
She
wanted to
says,
swing by
"Hi,
his place
no,
later."
Why?
I didn't have
Jesus,
anything going
long
on, no
story.
shifts at the hardware store.
I matched
no
someone
homework I cared
catfishing
about,
as you,
so I
and
told
we
him
talked
I'd be
for a
over.
while about high school. I
Michael's
really thought it
parents
was
had
you.
gone on a weekend trip to
I met
Vermont,
up with the person
and his
running
older
the
sister
account in
Emily
a
was
parking lot,
supposedly
but it
keeping
was
an
some
eye on
random
him.
car,
not your Jeep.
We all knew
so
that
I drove
just
away.
meant
The house was wide open
Then
for
he
whatever
sent
chaos we
screenshots
felt
of the
like causing.
conversation. When I got
On
to
August
Michael's
7th,
place, we did what we always did,
grabbed
Reiner, Wright, and
sodas,
Gable
sunk
Toast
into the
matched on
family room
Tinder.
couch, and played a few
Gable
rounds of
wasn't
Call
her
of Duty
usual
while
type,
talking about
looking
school
like a
drama,
man who
the
spends
Giants'
way too
latest
much
time on his
and the
appearance,
girls we had
but he
crushes
reminded
on.
her of Sam Winchester,
After a while,
character
Michael
in
mentioned the
Supernatural,
Halloween
one of her
party
favorite
going on a
TV
few
shows.
streets over.
Gable
A
opened
bunch
with
of
a
kids
raunchy
from
and
our school
aggressively
were heading
forward
there.
message, saying, "You look
At first,
delicious."
I wasn't
wanted
really
to do
feeling
dirty
it.
things
I'd had
to
a
you,
rough week,
to which
and
Warren
my
social
responds,
battery was
"Does
on
that
empty,
usually
but Michael
work?"
was excited.
And I
Gable
figured
then
I owed it
sends,
to him to
"Can
go.
you be a freak in the sheets?"
I
to
asked
which
if we
he
had to
says,
dress up,
"Probably
and he
not."
pulled out
Depends.
2 oversized shirts from
Gable
a drawer
says,
labeled
"What
Event
does it
Security.
depend on?" I laughed.
And Wariner responds,
"This
"What
is
I've
our
had
costume?"
to drink, LOL. He grinned.
Gable keeps the conversation
It's either
sexual
this or
by
wear
replying,
nothing. Your
"Let's get
call."
drunk together. I'm a
We
porn
threw the
star
shirts
after
on,
a few
and around
drinks."
10:30 p.m.,
We
Wariner
let Emily
gives
know
Gable
we were
her
heading
number
out
after the
not
two
that she
exchange
cared,
a few
and
more
walked
messages.
5 minutes down
And
the
a week
dark,
later, leased
they
two
meet for the
streets to the
first time
house.
in the Cabell Mall. From the sidewalk,
They spent the
we
night
could
together,
already hear
heavily
the music
drinking,
thumping,
and
and CCTV footage
orange
from
string
multiple
lights flickered
establishments
along the
showed them
porch.
meeting,
Fake
walking
cobwebs
into a
draped
nearby
over
beer
the
garden,
banister.
then purchasing a
We
six-pack
walked
of beer
inside
at a
and got
nearby
hit with a
bottle
wall
shop.
of sound of loud music, and after their
laughter,
night out
100
together,
conversations
they ended up blending
returning
into
to
the
one.
Avalon Apartments.
The
where
place
Gable
was
lived
jammed
alone
with kids
on the
in every
14th
kind
floor.
of costume, zombies,
6
clowns,
images taken
pirates,
by
you
Gable
name
that
it. Night show the couple apparently
lost
laughing
Michael
and
pretty
smiling in
quickly.
the apartment and on the balcony.
One of my
from
old
which
baseball
Warren would
teammates,
plunge to
Ryan,
her death,
grabbed
grabbed me
me
and
hours
pulled me
later.
into a corner where a few
For
others
whatever
were sitting
reason,
on an old
Gable
corduroy
recorded
couch,
the audio of
swapping
his
entire
stories
night
and
with
passing
Warren,
around soda
which
cans that
included the
definitely
entire
didn't just have soda
confrontation
in
the
them.
two would have towards the end
We
of the
laughed
night,
for what felt
which
like
was later
hours,
played
mostly
during
about
Gable's
dumb
trial.
stuff we did during last season.
It was later found out that
By
Gable
1
had a
a.m.,
weird
I
habit
was
of
drained.
recording his entire dates
I got
with
up to
multiple
find
women.
Michael. At
He
some
was in
point
the
after
kitchen
the two had
talking
sex,
to a girl in a
Wariner
devil
can be
costume,
heard becoming
clearly
increasingly
mid-flirt.
erratic and aggressive
I
towards
leaned
him.
in, whispered that I was
However,
heading back
as
to
the
his
night
house to
progresses,
crash.
Gable
And he
can
gave
be
me a
heard
quick
in the
nod.
recording,
refusing to let
But
her
the
leave.
girl he was
and
talking
Warina's
to asked if I
terrified
could
screams
grab
to
a
let
few
her go
drinks
home
from
or
the basement
silenced when
fridge
he
first.
locked her outside on the balcony.
I felt bad for interrupting
During
their
this
vibe,
recording,
so
Gable
Gable can allegedly be heard choking
The
out
basement
Wariner
door was
before
just
locking
off the
her
kitchen.
outside.
I should have never
flicked
given
on the
you so
light,
much to
and headed
drink.
down. I thought
The
we were
wooden
gonna
steps
have
creaked
fun.
under my feet.
Where's my shit? The basement was cold and
Where's your
smelled
phone?
like damp wood.
What's your
I
phone
reached
number?
the
bottom and stumbled a little,
100
bumping
fucking
into the
psycho
fridge
bitch.
door.
I
As
don't
I opened
deserve
it,
this shit.
I heard a voice whisper behind
All right.
me, "Boo."
I'm
I
a
spun
nice
around,
fucking guy.
startled.
Yeah,
There was
it
a
must
man
be on
tall,
the balcony.
maybe mid-30s, wearing
I
a
have
cheap
shit
black
loads
cloak.
of money in my eyes.
He had a fake smile
My
and raised
fucking
his
money.
hands like he was part of a prank.
Stop.
What
Just
the
calm
hell?
down, please.
I muttered, my
I'm
voice
not
slurred
calming
just
down.
enough to show how tired I was.
You've had too much to drink.
He chuckled and said he was
All
the
right.
host's cousin. I'm not
I
calming
was 2
down
days to
because I've
think
had so
clearly,
much to
but
drink
something
and I have
about him
shitloads
felt
of
wrong.
money in New Zealand.
Why was he down here
It's not
alone
funny.
while the party raged upstairs?
Shit. He
Just,
tried
you
making
know,
small
calm
talk,
down,
but I
please.
cut him off, saying I had
you
to get
know?
the drinks and head out.
How?
Normally,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
because
friendly
no one
with
else has
strangers,
money.
especially when I'm tired.
Do you
But
even
this guy gave
remember
off
what you were
weird
doing
energy.
to me like half an hour ago?
I grabbed a few cans,
It
mumbled
was freaking
goodbye,
me out.
and bolted up the stairs. You beat me up for no
He
reason.
called out, "Nice meeting you,"
Exactly.
as I left.
Why?
I didn't answer.
Because you said
The
you
air
had shit.
outside
felt better.
You thought I was funny
The
or
Halloween
something.
lights
along the block lit my
It's
short
not.
walk back to Michael's house. No, I told you.
It was quiet. In the audio, he can be
Peaceful,
heard saying to
even.
Warina that she was lucky
my
he
brain
didn't throw
kept
her replaying the encounter along with numerous other threats. The house was dark when I got back, and Emily's car was gone.
It's not about how.
I guessed she'd gone out after we left.
It is.
I didn't
You're
bother
fucking insane
turning
on any lights. It's not about how
I
you
headed
need.
straight for the basement where the
It's
couch
about
was
how
and
you do
collapsed
this
onto
shit
it.
now.
I must have been out
I
for
thought
maybe
you were
15
kidding me and
minutes
I've taken
before a
enough.
crash upstairs jerked me awake.
This is fucking bullshit.
I sat up. You're lucky
Heart-pounding.
I haven't chucked you off my fucking
listened.
balcony, you goddamn psycho
Nothing.
little bitch. I told myself I
fuck
was
do you
just
think I
dreaming,
am?
but then I heard footsteps.
Yeah, do your Muay Thai now.
Slow, heavy ones,
What?
pacing across the wooden floor
What?
above me.
Is there
I pulled
something
out
to
my
say?
phone
and texted Michael.
Say it.
You home yet?
Yeah.
I stared at the ceiling, not daring to breathe.
Then the basement door creaked open.
My body locked up.
I heard footsteps again, descending this time. I craned my neck to see the top of the stairs, and there he was.
That same man from the party. Standing silently.
His face was half lit by the hallway light above. His eyes scanned the room, slow and careful. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't see me. After what felt like forever, he turned and left. I heard the door shut softly.
I didn't wait.
I called 911. I explained everything, gave them the address, and waited. The windows were sealed shut. My only way out was the door where he had just been. Every creak in the house made me jump.
20 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside the basement window.
Turns out, he never left.
The police found him upstairs, hiding under Emily's bed.
She had come home just before they arrived. She was about to get into bed when she heard them knock.
I still don't know what he wanted or what he was planning.
The whole thing messes with my head sometimes. They later checked the neighbors' security cams.
You could clearly see the man following me after I left the party.
He lost me near Michael Street, but then spotted Emily getting out of her car. He watched her, waited, then broke in through the backyard door. The police think he followed me with the plan to sneak in, and something told me he didn't come back just for conversation. Let me tell you why I'll never step foot in a haunted house attraction again. I live in a quiet suburb outside Asheville, North Carolina.
Every fall, the town hosts this huge haunted maze attraction called the Hollow.
People drive in from other counties just to get scared senseless. I'd never been to one before, but this year, my friends convinced me it was finally time. I figured, why not? Before I get into the heart of it, you should know something about me. My childhood was rough. The kind that doesn't just go away when you grow up. I have PTSD, though I usually keep that to myself. It's under control most days, but certain things can still trigger me: loud noises, sudden lights, specific smells. I'll come back to that later. It was a chilly October weekend. My buddy Caleb hosted a little pregame in his backyard. Just 6 of us at Caleb, his 2 roommates Evan and Mark, their girlfriends Jenna and Brooke, and me. There was beer, cider, and someone brought a pre-roll. Everyone figured it'd take the edge off and make the haunted house even more fun. I usually don't smoke weed, messes with my head. But that night, I thought maybe I could push past it. A little personal challenge. To my surprise, I felt okay at first. Maybe the mix of alcohol and weed dulled the usual paranoia. I felt loose, maybe even lighthearted. We ordered an Uber and headed out. The place was about a 20-minute drive from Caleb's house, nestled along an old stretch of highway surrounded by woods. The Hollow had a massive turnout. There was already a 30-minute line when we got there, but no one minded. We joked with people ahead of us and shared nervous laughs. I was feeling the buzz but still present. I remember everything clearly, unfortunately. As we got to the front of the line, something shifted. I started feeling weird. Kind of dizzy, like my feet weren't under me anymore. But I didn't say anything. Didn't want to kill the vibe. We stepped inside, and from the first minute, it was sensory overload. Loud screams, dark hallways, people in twisted makeup lunging out of the shadows. The production value was insane, and the actors were committed. Too committed. My anxiety climbed fast. The walls felt like they were closing in. One of the actors, this big guy in clown makeup, locked eyes with me and wouldn't let go. He got inches from my face, barking and growling. I froze. Every part of me wanted to run. But I didn't. I kept walking, trying to laugh it off. My friends thought I was just extra scared. They didn't know I was barely holding it together. Then we reached this long hallway with fog and red lights. At the far end was a man dressed in an old-timey black suit and top hat. He was yelling like a carnival barker, part of the show. But behind him, in the corner, someone else stood. No costume. No movement. Just a man. Watching me. And my heart nearly exploded, because I recognized him. It was my father. Every hair on my body stood up. My knees went weak, and I screamed from somewhere deep inside. The whole room went silent. My friends turned, laughing at first, thinking I was joking. But when they saw my face, everything changed. Jenna grabbed my arm and asked what was wrong. "It's my dad," I whispered, pointing. But he was gone. The corner was empty. The actors looked confused. My friends stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. Caleb stepped forward. "There's no one there, man." My breathing got heavy. My chest was tight. I couldn't stop shaking. "I need to leave," I gasped. "Please, I need to get out." Caleb didn't hesitate. He led me out through a side exit. We sat on a bench outside while the others finished. I told them to go on, it wasn't cheap, and I didn't want to ruin their night. I was embarrassed. I'd never broken down like that in front of them. Caleb sat beside me the whole time. "You shouldn't have smoked, man," he said gently. "It was just the weed, just a bad trip." But it wasn't just that. Not even close. My father was abusive. Violent. He hurt my siblings and me for years. I was the oldest, so I remember the most. He left one day when I was 10 and never came back. We never found out where he went. My mom never talked about it again. Caleb knew some of this. Not all of it. That night, I didn't need to say much more. He understood enough. After the others were done, we regrouped at a nearby diner, Wendy's, actually. I barely touched my food. I just needed something warm, something normal. My friends didn't make fun of me. They were quiet, supportive. At least to my face. I left early. Just wanted to go home. When I got back, I collapsed into bed, still foggy from the drinks and everything that happened. And then, the dream started. I was back in that hallway. The red lights. The fog. The man in the corner. He turned to face me and whispered, "Wake up, Charlie." I jolted awake. It was pitch black. I was back in my room. But something was wrong. I wasn't alone. Standing over me was my father. Or something that looked like him. But twisted. He was taller. Way taller. 9 feet maybe. His back was bent like it had snapped in half. His face, his eyes, wide open like he hadn't blinked in hours. He leaned down, so close I could smell something rancid, like burnt wood and rot. And for a moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. Then I screamed. A raw, primal sound. My mom burst into the room and flipped on the lights. He was gone. I sat there shaking, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My body was cold, soaked in sweat. Through tears, I whispered, "I saw Dad." She didn't say anything. Just held me. That night shattered something in me. Since then, I haven't touched weed, or anything stronger than a light beer. And haunted houses? Not a chance. Some things you don't mess with. Some doors, once opened, don't close quietly. What do you think I saw that night? Was it the drugs? A hallucination? Or, did something darker find a way back in? During the peak of the pandemic, I thought it'd be fun to pick up a seasonal job. My friend Emily had been working at this local haunted attraction just outside of Pine Hollow, a small town in upstate New York. She told me they needed more actors, and after a quick Zoom call with the owner, I got the gig. The attraction was pretty big for a rural area. It had 3 haunted houses and a haunted corn maze that wrapped around the edge of an old farm. My first night was just a training run, sort of a rehearsal where I'd act out my role for one of the coordinators to make sure I was up to par. They cast me as the classic damsel in distress, which meant I'd be tied to a wooden pole deep in the corn maze, crying out to guests for help as they walked by. Of course, every guest was told not to touch the actors. So when I begged people to untie me, they'd know it was just part of the show. Still, I was surprised when the supervisor, his name was Dylan, actually tied me to the post. Not tightly, just enough to look real. I asked how bathroom breaks worked, and he said there would be small pauses between guest groups, and that a staff member would be nearby in case I needed anything. That helped a little. Once Dylan left, I was on my own. Creepy ambient sounds floated in from speakers hidden in the crops, whispers, creaks, the occasional scream. A small air horn sounded in the distance, meaning the maze was open. Time to get into character. Since I was posted somewhere in the middle of the maze, it took a few minutes before any guests passed me. I started shouting things like, "Please. He's coming back. You have to untie me." Some people played along and I'd improvise back. It was honestly kind of fun. Everyone wore masks, so it was hard to read their faces, but some guests laughed, some jumped, and some just nodded and walked on. Then, two men, probably in their mid-30s, passed by. They didn't say anything. One of them just stared at me, and the way his eyes locked onto mine made my skin crawl. Something about him felt off. A while passed before I heard rustling nearby. It sounded like someone walking through the corn, not along the path. At first, I thought maybe it was a crew member. But when I turned to look, two men stepped out from between the tall stalks. It was the same two guys from before. I broke character right away. "Hey, you're not supposed to leave the trail," I said, trying to sound calm. One of them just laughed under his mask. They started speaking to each other in another language, Russian, maybe, and one of them stepped back onto the path, but instead of walking away, he just stood there. Watching. The other one came toward me. I backed away as far as the rope would let me, but he still reached out and started grabbing at me in a way that was way beyond what anyone would think was part of a haunted attraction. I screamed loud. I didn't care if I shattered someone's eardrums. I screamed that I was being attacked, that this wasn't part of the act. I yelled for help with everything I had. A few moments later, Dylan came rushing through the maze. As soon as the men saw him, they bolted, vanished back into the corn. Dylan untied me quickly and walked me out of the maze. I called my parents right away. They told me to leave. Now. Back at the staff tent, Dylan and another supervisor named Jeremiah said they'd still pay me for the night, and that they understood if I didn't want to come back. I thanked them and said I'd keep in touch. I really wish that had been the end of it. On my way home, I kept checking my rearview mirror. Something didn't feel right. About halfway back, I noticed a white SUV that had been behind me since I left the farm. I tried to shake it, took random turns, looped through residential streets, but the SUV stayed with me every time. That's when panic set in. I grabbed my phone and asked Google to find the nearest police station. There was one just a few miles away. I drove straight there. The SUV tailed me the entire way until I turned into the precinct parking lot. That's when it kept going. No hesitation. Just gone. I sat in the parking lot with the engine running for 10 full minutes, staring into the night, just making sure no one circled back. When I was sure it was safe, I drove home. Slowly. Carefully. Constantly checking my mirrors. I never went back to that haunted house. Not once. When Lauren's father passed away, she moved back to her small hometown, Willow Creek. It was quiet, surrounded by trees and old roads. She hadn't been there in years. The house was old. 2 floors, creaky wood, and the same front porch swing she remembered from childhood. The wind always felt colder there, like it carried something with it. She came alone. Just her and her thoughts. Lauren was tired. Not just from the drive, but from everything. Her job had been stressful. Her relationship had ended. And now, her father was gone. The house felt empty. But also, watched. She unpacked slowly. Put her phone on silent. No one to call. No one to message. She just wanted peace. Outside, the streetlight flickered. It had always done that. Even when she was little, she remembered staring at it from her bedroom window. It was fall. Cold leaves scraped the porch. The trees whispered in the wind. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. That night, Lauren noticed something strange. In the second-floor window of the empty house across the street, there was a lamp. A soft, orange light glowing. But that house had been empty for years. She stared at it from her own window. The curtain there moved slightly. Just a twitch. She told herself it was wind. The next morning, the lamp was off. No light. No curtain movement. Nothing. She asked the mailman about the house across the street. No one's lived there since the Millers moved out. That was 5 years ago, he said. Lauren nodded. But, do you ever see a light there? The man shook his head. That place has no power. They cut it after a break-in last year. That night, the lamp was on again. Lauren sat in the dark, watching. The light never flickered. It just stayed on, glowing like a soft warning. She thought about calling someone. But who? The police? To say a lamp is on? No. She was tired. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe grief was playing tricks on her. She went to bed early. But around midnight, she woke up. Her phone screen was glowing. It had turned itself on. No new messages. Just the camera app open. And it was facing her. Lauren sat up. Her heart was loud in her chest. She turned off the phone, set it down. Then she looked out the window. The lamp in the house across the street was off. But the curtain was open now. She could see into the room. There was a chair. And in that chair, someone was sitting. Still. Facing her. Lauren froze. She shut her blinds quickly. Locked the front door. Made sure all the windows were closed. She told herself, it's not real. It's just stress. But her hands were shaking. She didn't sleep much. The next morning, she looked again. No one. The window across the street was dark. The chair was empty. The curtain still open. She took a walk to clear her head. She walked by the house. The yard was overgrown. The porch sagged. The windows were dusty. She peeked inside. There was a chair. And a lamp. But no bulb in the socket. No power in the walls. She turned and hurried back home. That night, the lamp was on again. Lauren sat in her room, lights off, staring through the blinds. And then her phone buzzed. No caller ID. She answered it slowly. Hello? There was no voice. Just breathing. Then a click. She dropped the phone. Looked up. The person in the chair was standing now. Still facing her. Closer to the window than before. Lauren backed away from her own window. She didn't know what to do. She called 911. Someone's in the abandoned house across from mine, she said. I think they're watching me. The dispatcher asked for her address. Then paused. Ma'am, that house was boarded up this morning. By the city. No one's been allowed inside. Lauren's breath caught. What? No. I saw someone there. I'm looking at them. The dispatcher said they'd send an officer. When the police arrived, Lauren met them outside. Together, they crossed the street. The officer tried the front door. It was sealed. Nailed shut. They walked around to the side. All the windows had boards. Except one. The one with the lamp. It was open. They stepped inside. Dust. Silence. Cobwebs everywhere. They went to the room upstairs. The chair was there. The lamp was there. Still glowing. But no cord. No bulb. Just light. The officer reached out to touch it.
And the light blinked off.
The room felt cold. Like a breath.
Someone was here, Lauren said. The officer looked around.
This place is dead, he said.
It's just old. Lauren left the house shaking.
She didn't sleep in her father's home that night. She drove to a motel instead. She never stayed in that town again. But sometimes she dreams about the light.
About the chair.
About the person watching her. And sometimes she wakes up to her phone's camera, open again.
What do you think happened? Have you ever felt like you were being watched, but no one was there? My name's Jake. I live in a quiet little town called Red Hollow.
It's the kind of place where folks wave at each other and the loudest thing at night is the wind pushing through the trees. I moved back here last fall after losing my mom. She passed away suddenly. After that, life in the city felt too fast, too loud. So I came back to the town I grew up in, hoping it would help me heal.
I got a job as a night security officer for the county. Nothing big. Mostly patrolling old roads, checking on shutdown properties, and making sure teenagers weren't sneaking into places they shouldn't be.
Easy work, really. Or so I thought. One night in late October, just before Halloween, I got a call from dispatch. They asked me to check out a report of flickering lights at an abandoned house out on Hollow Creek Road. The house used to belong to the Wilkins family. People said it had been empty for over a decade.
The place always gave me the creeps, even when I was a kid.
It sat alone at the edge of the woods, with dead vines crawling up the sides and windows so dusty you couldn't see inside. Still, I didn't think much of the call. Figured it was just faulty wiring or someone playing a prank. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The road was quiet. The streetlight stopped 2 blocks before the property, so I parked on the side and walked the rest of the way. The wind was cold that night. It howled through the trees and carried the scent of wet leaves and damp wood. My boots crunched softly on the gravel as I approached the gate. It hung open, swaying slowly like someone had just walked through. The house stood still, dark except for one thing upstairs, in the far left window, a light was blinking.
On. Off. On again. I radioed it in. Red Hollow Dispatch, this is Officer Jake Turner. I'm at the Wilkins property. Light in the upstairs room is flickering. No movement outside. Proceeding to check it out. Copy that, Jake. Be careful, came the reply. I stepped through the gate. Each step felt heavier than the last. My flashlight flicked left, right, then forward again. The porch creaked under my feet. I reached for the doorknob. Unlocked. The smell hit me first. Old, stale air mixed with something faintly sour, like wet fabric left out too long. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No scurrying rats, no wind through the broken windows. Just silence, thick and unmoving. I started up the stairs. My flashlight flickered. The beam wavered for a second, then came back. I tapped it. It steadied. I hated when that happened. Each step creaked loud in the stillness. I reached the second floor, turned left, and stood in front of the blinking room. The door was shut. I placed my hand on the knob and turned slowly. It groaned open. The room was empty. No furniture. Just peeling wallpaper, rotted floorboards, and a single lamp in the corner. Unplugged. Still blinking. My heart skipped. I stepped inside, scanning the room. That's when I noticed the floor near the lamp. It was wet. Not water. Something dark, sticky. I crouched down, shining my light closer. It looked like blood. I stood quickly, backing toward the door. That's when I heard it. A soft creak behind me. I turned fast. No one there. Then, the lamp stopped blinking. The room went dark. Click. The door slammed shut. I yanked at the knob. It wouldn't move. The air grew heavy. I could feel something in the room. Not see it. Not hear it. But feel it, like the way you know someone's watching you even when you're alone. Then came the whispers. Low. Garbled. Like an old radio stuck between stations. They surrounded me, coming from all sides. I backed into the wall, heart pounding. "Who's there?" I shouted. Silence. Then the lamp blinked once more. And in that short burst of light I saw it. A figure. Thin. Pale. Its face twisted like melting wax. Standing right where the lamp had been. The light died. I slammed into the door with all my weight. Once. Twice. On the third hit, it burst open and I stumbled into the hallway. No footsteps. No sound. Just me, panting, heart racing. I didn't stop. I ran down the stairs, out the front door, and back to my car. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the station and filed my report. The next day, we sent someone out. The house was locked. No lamp. No wet floor. Nothing. They laughed it off. Said I'd been working too many nights. Maybe I had. But that house isn't right. I still work night shifts, but I've made it clear I won't go near Hollow Creek Road again. Some nights, though, I dream of that room. Of that blinking light. Of that face. And sometimes I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't gotten the door open? Before we begin, just remember what you're about to hear really happened. These stories might sound like urban legends or plotlines from a thriller, but every single one occurred on the infamous day known for superstition and spine-tingling lore, Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th has long held a reputation for being unlucky, but in 2023, the date took on extra weight. It fell in October, the spookiest month of the year. Most folks associate it with scary movie marathons or haunted hayrides, but some chilling real-life events have occurred on this supposedly cursed day. Let's start with a name you definitely know: Tupac Shakur. One of the most iconic voices in American hip-hop, Tupac was more than a musician, he was a cultural force. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was in Las Vegas for a night out celebrating his partner's birthday. After watching a big fight at the MGM Grand, Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon, he left with Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records. Later that night, as their BMW sat at a stoplight, a white Cadillac pulled up beside them. Someone inside opened fire. Tupac was hit multiple times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the leg. One of those bullets pierced his lung. He died 6 days later, on September 13, Friday the 13th. His murder remained unsolved for decades, sparking endless conspiracy theories pointing fingers at Suge Knight, rival rapper Biggie Smalls, and more. But in September 2023, a major break came. Police arrested Dwayne Keith Davis, now in his 60s, charging him with orchestrating the hit. Though he didn't pull the trigger himself, investigators believe he ordered the attack. As of now, the trial is ongoing. A lot of people avoid flying on Friday the 13th. Some say it's silly superstition. But then again, some things can't be explained. Back in October 1972, on Friday the 13th, a plane carrying 45 people, including a Uruguayan rugby team, crashed in the icy wilderness of the Andes Mountains. 12 people died instantly. More perished from their injuries or the brutal cold. With little hope for survival, and no food, the remaining survivors made an unthinkable decision: they ate the flesh of those who had died. For 72 days, they waited. Finally, 2 men set out on foot, hiking through snowy peaks with almost no gear. 10 days later, they reached civilization, alerting authorities that 16 people were still alive on the mountain. Their rescue became one of the most incredible survival stories in modern history. But here's the eerie part: on that exact same Friday the 13th, in the very same year, another plane went down. Aeroflot Flight 217 crashed while approaching a Russian airport in terrible weather. The crash killed all 174 people on board. It's still considered one of the worst aviation disasters in history. And the cause?
Officially, it was never fully determined, but most believe it came down to human error.
Is it just coincidence? Maybe.
But after hearing that, you might think twice before booking that Friday the 13th flight.
Now we leave the skies behind and turn to the sea.
On Friday the 13th of January, 2012, the luxury cruise ship Costa Concordia left port in Italy for what should have been a relaxing voyage.
Over 4,000 people were aboard, including more than 1,000 crew members. But as the ship neared the scenic island of Giglio, the captain made a fateful decision. He ordered the ship to veer closer to land for its sail-by salute.
A little horn blast to impress those watching from the shore. But the area was known for hidden rock formations, and as the ship turned, it struck a reef. A massive gash, 174 feet long, tore into its hull. The vessel began to tilt and take on water, eventually listing and partially sinking along a rocky ledge.
Though many passengers were rescued, 33 people died.
The captain, Francesco Schettino, was later found guilty of manslaughter. He had abandoned ship while people were still trapped on board. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison. The company behind the cruise, Carnival Corporation, paid billions in damages, but faced no criminal charges. The shipwreck remains one of the most expensive and tragic cruise disasters in modern history.
Now let's move to a chilling case of horror inside the home.
David McGreevy was born in 1951 in a quiet British town, one of 6 children raised by a military family.
He had a rough upbringing, bouncing between army bases.
Though there were no major red flags in his youth, David's adult life quickly unraveled. He was kicked out of the Royal Navy after starting a fire, broke up with his fiancée, and lost job after job. Eventually, David found refuge with a friend, Clive Ralph, and Clive's wife Dorothy in a small house in Worcester. The couple had young children, and David, seen as gentle and good with kids, took on babysitting duties. But on Friday the 13th of April, 1973, everything changed. That evening, David had been drinking heavily. Witnesses say he downed several pints at the local pub and returned home with Clive to look after the children while Clive picked up Dorothy from work.
Sometime between 10:15 and 11:15 p.m., something inside David snapped.
Triggered by the crying of baby Samantha, David unleashed a horrifying wave of violence. He murdered all 3 children each in a brutal, different manner. Afterward, he dragged a pickaxe from the basement and used it to mutilate their small bodies. He was found wandering the streets hours later.
At first, he denied everything.
But soon, he confessed.
His only explanation?
The baby wouldn't stop crying. David was sentenced to life in prison and spent most of his time behind bars in solitary, due to constant threats from other inmates. In 2018, after 45 years in prison, he was granted parole. It's a case that still haunts the UK to this day.
Now let's fast forward to another Friday the 13th tragedy, this one disturbingly ironic.
In 1976, a man named Des Baxter decided to stay in bed all day, hoping to avoid the bad luck that Friday the 13th supposedly brings.
It was meant to be a safe move. He stayed home. Didn't drive. Didn't go to work.
But just before noon, the floor of his apartment gave way, and Des fell to his death. The building's foundation had rotted. Out of all the apartments, it was his unit, the one with the man who stayed home just to avoid misfortune, that collapsed.
So, is Friday the 13th cursed? Or just another day? That depends on who you ask. Sure, tragedies happen every day.
But the stories tied to this particular date, plane crashes, shipwrecks, mysterious murders, and cruel twists of fate, seem to carry an extra chill in the air.
Maybe it's just coincidence.
Or maybe, there's something about Friday the 13th that the calendar can't explain.
What do you think? Have you ever had something strange or eerie happen on that date? Let me know your story below. And if you're hearing this on a Friday the 13th, maybe double check the locks. Just in case.